It is here that a man lives, commonly known as the Hunchback. To him, the circus is not merely a means of survival, but the only place where he can cling to hope. Among the members of the circus troupe, most regard one another as family. However, the Hunchback is different. He is merely a clown, mocked and ridiculed for everyone's amusement. Every night, his body becomes an object of violence, used solely to entertain the audience, yet he has never once resented such humiliation. To him, the most important thing is simply to continue existing, especially since he has never once seen the world beyond. Hidden behind his physical deformities, the Hunchback possesses extraordinary intelligence. Particularly in the field of medicine, he has a deep passion for anatomy and medical knowledge, often secretly spending time reading books and conducting his own research. It is from here that a new chapter in his life slowly begins to unfold. That night, the circus grows even more lively. As Lorelai's dangerous performance begins, the beautiful girl, whom the Hunchback secretly loves, but no one expects a sudden accident to occur mid-performance. The rope Lorelai is using suddenly snaps, causing her to fall from a great height, right before the shocked audience. Witnessing this, the Hunchback rushes forward to help. At the same time, a man named Victor appears to assist as well by lightly tearing Lorelai's costume. To examine her condition, both quickly realize that her ribs are damaged, making it difficult for her to breathe. Using the Hunchback's medical knowledge and Victor's pocket watch, they improvise emergency medical tools. They administer first aid swiftly, with results even more effective than those of a professional doctor. Unfortunately, after the incident, the circus owner feels humiliated. In his rage, he blames everything on the Hunchback. The medical notebook he treasures is burned to ashes, and he himself is cruelly locked inside an iron cage. Unexpectedly, Victor discovers the remaining notes and immediately recognizes the Hunchback's genius. He returns to the circus and uses to unlock the cage and free him. Sadly, before they can escape, Nebby discovers their plan. A tense chase immediately begins. While fleeing, they are cornered and nearly shot. Thanks to his quick thinking, Victor creates a light illusion, using reflections from mirrors, causing the pursuers to turn on one another. With this brilliant idea, Victor and the Hunchback escape through the sewer system. After returning home, Victor immediately treats the Hunchback. He discovers that the lump on his back is not a congenital deformity, but an abscess that has silently developed for 18 years. After draining the pus completely, Victor helps realign his spine and fits him with a brace, allowing him to stand upright. For the first time in his life, the case is immediately placed under investigation. The head of the police force, renowned for his strictness, personally takes charge of the inquiry. However, they fail to track down his whereabouts, finding only Victor's woven bag and a portrait of Igor in the room. Based on these clues, the inspector orders a manhunt for the Hunchback. The next morning, Igor finds a note left by Victor, stating that he has gone to the university and will return late in the evening. The note also mentions that he left some money for Igor to cover daily expenses. Knowing Victor is not at home, Igor decides to visit the woman he loves, who is still receiving treatment at the hospital. Unfortunately, upon arrival, Lorelai has yet to regain consciousness. To ensure her condition remains stable, Igor uses the remaining money to request the nurse apply a specific ointment that he recommends. Before leaving, he leaves a message saying that one day, he will definitely return to visit Lorelai. On his way home, Igor is stunned to see countless wanted posters plastered across the city walls. He freezes in shock upon realizing his own face is printed on them, alongside accusations of murder. The sudden panic causes him to lose focus, and he slams his head into a street lamp. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, a priest begins to sense something unusual. He suspects that the incident at the circus the previous night is connected to an illegal transaction. The inspector also believes that the person who helped Igor that night is the true mastermind behind the case, especially after discovering a fragment of a lion's paw inside a bag found at the scene. That night, Igor appears deeply sorrowful and desperate after reading the posters, falsely accusing him of being a murderer. However, Victor tries to reassure him, saying the police are only chasing a nameless, worthless hunchback, someone who no longer exists. What remains now is a brilliant man, far beyond the image of a lowly circus clown. During dinner, Igor finally gathers the courage to ask why Victor appeared at the circus and why he saved him that night. Victor calmly explains that he was searching for animal corpses to use for his research. As for saving Igor, it was not out of pity, but because he recognized Igor's immense potential and profound knowledge in the field of anatomy. To clarify his intentions, Victor leads Igor into his laboratory. There, he shows Igor the results of his ongoing research. 2 human eyeballs preserved in a special solution for 3 months. Victor then presents his theory, claiming that things which have died can, in fact, be revived. Without hesitation, he activates a device of his own invention, sending an electric current into the eyeballs. Igor is utterly astonished when the eyes begin to move and blink under the light, appearing almost alive. However, upon closer inspection, Igor realizes that the nervous system Victor connected is incorrect, as the eyeballs do not move in unison. Hearing this analysis, Victor is not disappointed at all. Instead, he appears pleased, more convinced than ever that Igor possesses extraordinary ability. From that moment on, Victor allows Igor. Igor devotes himself entirely and will be invaluable to his future research. Origins of those organs. Fueled by boundless passion, he strives to repair and reconstruct nervous systems from the fragments. Yet on the other side, Victor keeps his true actions downstairs hidden, even forbidding Igor from asking about them in the slightest. One day, Victor invites Igor to attend a family gathering. Unexpectedly, at the event, Igor sees the woman he secretly loves. At first, he hesitates to approach her. But to everyone's surprise, Lorelei is the one who steps forward first. She is utterly astonished to realize that the man before her is the very person who saved her life years ago. An emotional moment arises between them. They converse warmly, asking about each other after a long separation. Not long after, Victor approaches and invites them both to dinner. During the meal, Victor begins to share his thoughts about the research he is conducting. It is an ambitious endeavor to resurrect the dead. Naturally, Lorelei lacks scientific expertise and grows skeptical, believing it violates the laws of nature. In her view, what has died should be allowed to rest in peace. However, driven by unwavering conviction, Victor continues explaining his theory, while Igor tries to calm and persuade Lorelei that everything is meant to advance science. Though still unconvinced, Lorelei ultimately pretends to agree. After leaving the gathering, Victor immediately leads Igor into the secret basement he has long concealed, to reveal the of his research. As the massive laboratory doors open, Igor cannot hide his shock at the vast space within, filled with bizarre equipment. Curiosity, mixed with a chilling sense of dread, quickly rises. All his questions are answered when Victor introduces his creation. It turns out that all this time, the body parts Igor helped repair were assembled by Victor to form the body of this monster. Once every part is complete, Victor proceeds to the next experiment, channeling high-voltage electricity to revive the corpse. Sure enough, the creature begins to move and breathe, though only briefly, still unable to function fully. Even so, to Victor, this marks the beginning of a monumental success. He officially recognizes Igor as his research partner, planning the next day to present this invention at the university. However, without Victor's knowledge, Igor secretly writes to invite Lorelei to witness the presentation. The long-awaited moment finally arrives. Filled with pride, Victor stands before professors and students, declaring that death is no longer something to fear. With scientific progress, death itself can be transformed into a new form of life. Victor immediately activates the device, sending electricity into the monster's body. However, the creature shows no response, aside from oozing putrid fluids from its decaying body. Witnessing this, most of the audience leaves immediately. Only one man and Lorelei remain. Victor refuses to give up, attempting again at maximum power. Seconds later, a miracle occurs. The creature comes back to life. It rises, breathing heavily, its body trembling violently. But soon after, the creature turns savage, losing control and attacking everything around it. In the ensuing chaos, thanks to the combined effort and quick thinking of both men, the monster is finally subdued and returns to a lifeless state. After the demonstration, a wealthy noble approaches Victor, offering full support and unlimited funding to further perfect his research. Hearing this proposal, Victor's ambition ignites even more fiercely. This time, he is determined to go further and experiment on an actual human body. However, upon hearing Victor's new plan, Igor begins to feel uneasy and strongly objects. He is deeply worried as this experiment will no longer involve animals, but human beings. Nevertheless, Victor remains determined to pursue his obsession. He even lashes out at Igor, accusing him of obstructing the progress of the research. Several days later, the inspector arrives at Victor's house with an assistant. While there, the inspector quietly realizes that Igor is the former hunchback who once worked at the circus. However, he does not mention it, instead focusing on questioning Victor about the disturbance at the university. Unwilling to have his secrets exposed, Victor calmly replies that he is merely studying the intelligence of a chimpanzee. Clearly dissatisfied with this answer, the inspector presses on, expressing suspicion that Victor's research is connected to the theft of animal body parts. 6 months earlier, with a stern attitude, the inspector demands that Victor hand over all research records from that period. Feeling insulted by the accusations, which he deems baseless, Victor finally loses his patience and forcibly expels them from his home. Before leaving, the inspector warns that he will return with a search warrant. The following day, while Victor is sketching anatomical diagrams in preparation for his next experiment, he is startled by the sudden appearance of his father. His father arrives in a fury after receiving notice from the university stating that Victor has been neglecting his studies and now faces expulsion. Not wanting to escalate the conflict, Victor attempts to explain that he is focused on a major research project that could bring honor to the family. However, his father remains unconvinced, believing that Victor is wasting his education and acting foolishly due to his mad obsession. After his father leaves, Victor collapses emotionally, silently reflecting on his increasingly chaotic life. Seeing this, Igor tries to comfort him, offering support by discussing the technical aspects of the project, particularly the power source required to revive a human body. After a long discussion, they conclude that the only energy source powerful enough to reanimate such a being is lightning itself. However, they also realize that their current equipment cannot withstand such immense power. Therefore, Igor proposes that the artificial body be equipped with 2 lungs and 2 hearts to stabilize the electrical current from lightning. The inspector grows increasingly frustrated at his inability to obtain a search warrant. The following day, Igor asks permission to attend a party at Lorelai's invitation, and Victor generously agrees. However, upon returning from the party, Igor is horrified to find the inspector and police force conducting a search of Victor's house. Unfortunately, they cannot force entry because the door has been locked from the inside. Inside the laboratory, the situation quickly descends into chaos. In a state of panic, Igor urges them to flee immediately before everything spirals out of control. But just as they are about to escape, Igor suddenly freezes at a horrifying sight. A corpse missing its eyeballs is frozen inside a glass chamber. Before he can ask any questions, the inspector bursts in, aiming his gun directly at them. In the critical moment, Victor explains that the body is not a murder victim, but rather the remains of his close friend, who died from a drug overdose. He insists on his innocence and claims that all body parts he used belonged to people who had already died, not victims of crime. Rejecting this explanation, a violent struggle erupts between Victor and the inspector. Victor fights back fiercely and ultimately overpowers the inspector, severing his arm in the process. Afterward, they quickly escape through the underground tunnel beneath the house, heading to their investor's residence. Upon arrival, Vinnegan immediately urges Victor and Igor to leave London as soon as possible. He even offers them safe refuge on his family estate, in a castle located in Scotland, where they can do whatever they want, without restriction. However, upon hearing this plan, Igor firmly refuses. He bluntly advises Victor to stop before things go too far and become irreversible. Unfortunately, Victor's reason has been completely consumed by his scientific obsession. Enraged, he abandons Igor without hesitation. Seeing their paths diverge completely, Vinnegan concludes that Igor's existence has become an obstacle. Thus, he decides to eliminate him by kidnapping Igor and throwing him into a river. Fortunately, Igor manages to free the rope tied around his leg and surface just before losing his last breath. After the near-death ordeal, Igor awakens in a room beside Lorelai. His gaze falls upon the pocket watch Victor once gave him, reminding him of Victor's childhood story, when he was lost in a snow-covered forest with his younger brother, who tragically did not survive. That guilt has haunted Victor ever since. Igor then discovers that inside the pocket watch is engraved the name of Victor's brother. This confirms that the frozen body was in fact Victor's younger brother. Realizing the truth, Igor decides to return and find Victor. Meanwhile, Lorelai saves and nurses him, urging him to rest until fully recovered. Nevertheless, Igor remains resolute. He feels indebted to Victor and cannot bear to leave him alone to face such danger. Eventually, Lorelai agrees, and the two set off together for Scotland. Along the journey, unexpectedly, the inspector reappears, attempting to intercept them. Fortunately, Igor notices in time and evades him by taking another route. After a long and arduous journey, Igor finally reaches his destination. There, he is horrified to realize that Victor's experiment has entered its final stage. Unwilling to let things go too far, Igor rushes in to stop him. He desperately tries to convince Victor that the experiment is extremely dangerous, warning him that Vinagan may betray him, just as he once tried to kill Igor. However, Victor completely ignores him. He declares his intent to resurrect his brother. Victor refuses to change his stance and decides to continue. Success is only one step away. At Victor's command, the massive body is slowly lifted and positioned as planned. Victor and the entire team take their places, awaiting the decisive moment. The instant lightning strikes, and electricity surges through the system. The body created by Victor begins to tremble violently. Soon after, the corpse truly breathes and moves its arm. Everyone present is stunned. However, the astonishment does not last long. Another massive lightning bolt suddenly strikes, causing the creature to collapse and crush Vinagan to death on the spot. Victor frantically tries to regain control, but the chaos only worsens. Moments later, the inspector appears. Unable to contain his fury, he shouts that Victor has strayed onto a dark path and will face divine punishment. Victor only laughs in response, declaring that he does not believe in God. Instead, he proudly admires his own creation. Meanwhile, the creature slowly rises and advances toward Victor. Overwhelmed with emotion, Victor attempts to embrace his creation, only to realize it possesses no emotions at all. Recognizing the danger, the inspector immediately opens fire. However, this only drives the monster into a frenzy, and it kills the inspector with a single punch. Witnessing this horror, Igor and Victor realize they must cooperate. Together, they fight the monster Victor himself created. In a brief moment, Igor manages to stab the creature through the heart, but tragically, he forgets that it has two hearts. In an instant, Igor is struck down and loses consciousness. Now, Victor stands alone. He continues fighting with his last remaining strength, until he finally pierces the creature's second heart. The massive body collapses and dies completely. Sometime later, Igor regains consciousness. He searches everywhere for Victor, but cannot find him anywhere. His anxiety eases somewhat when Lorelei appears, bringing a letter Victor left behind. In the letter, Victor writes that he has departed to continue perfecting his invention somewhere else. The film ends here.